This old guy DIY video has to do with replacing the upper and lower control arms on a 1993 Chevy S10 pickup. So this vehicle was run into a tree and the A-arms were bent back. So I bought the replacement parts. We have them right here. Yeah, let's see, that's the upper. There's the part number for the lower. And I'm just going to tear into this thing. So the first step is just jack up the vehicle and take that front tire off. Now to break the upper control arm loose, I used a 3/4 inch socket to remove this little castle nut after I had taken out the pin. Then I just used this pickle fork or whatever they call it to go in here as a wedge. And you can see the whole knuckle assembly is off now. So now this thing swings up and down freely. So I just need to take off these two bolts, or two nuts on the back here, and then I should be able to put the new upper on. But that thing was very straightforward. Just took a couple of minutes, and we'll get it out of here shortly. So this thing was a pain to remove, and ultimately I ended up going on the back side and pushing this bolt out. And that nut apparently is an 18 millimeter. I didn't have an 18 millimeter open end, so I used a 3/4, and it was a little sloppy, but I was able to take the thing out. And there was no good way to get a tool in here, so it was just a lot of manual back and forth, getting about a 1/16 of a turn at a time. But once I had the nuts off, these pieces are pushed all the way back through there, and I tried to push that top A-arm back, and it made contact here, so there was no way you could push it out. So then I took a big pry bar and I pried under this metal piece that serves as a rotation stopper. So I stuck a pry bar in here, I pried that out towards myself, and then I was able to pull that control arm off. So now I have the old control arm laying there, the new control arm laying there, and before I put the new control arm back on, I'm going to take this bottom end apart. Particularly, I have to take the stabilizer link off, and then I'll take care of the bottom end before I put it back together. Well, I got the lower control arm off, and if you look here, you can see where the thing's deformed and smashed there. And if we compare that one to the profile on the new part, so the new part comes, you have to put the Zerk fitting in it. These two clips that hold the shock absorber came off of this part, and then I also have to get this bolt down in here that holds the rubber jounce stop. But on this particular unit, since it was crushed in the wreck, I'll just take the grinder and I'll cut a V here, and then I'll be able to get a socket in there and get that off. So right now I don't have the clearance for the socket. So as this thing was mounted to the car, I was surprised to find that the fasteners here required a 20 millimeter socket. The fasteners towards the rear of the vehicle required 18 millimeter. And when I was disassembling it, the first thing I did was take off the idler arm, and then I came over here where the bracket came through for the front stabilizer, and I removed that front stabilizer. Then I took the castle nut off of the lower ball joint, and then I was able to just whack this thing a couple times with a heavy mallet here, and the ball joint just popped out. So then it was just the spring sitting in this spring pocket that held it together. I put a floor jack beneath that to hold up some of the pressure, and then with a punch and a hammer I was able to just punch those respective bolts to the inside, let the floor jack down, and the whole unit came off in my hand. So it was relatively straightforward. There are only 6 bolts that you have to worry about to remove this thing, so I'm sure you can figure that part out. So right now I'm going to grind this off, get the nut off the back, put it on the new arm, and reassemble the unit. Now to reassemble this thing, I just put in the 2 pins, one there and one there, so this will tip up and down. And then I have the jack beneath it. Now I'm just going to set the spring in the spring pocket, and then I'll crank the jack up and start reassembling this. When I went to reinstall the spring last night, I could quickly see that it was going to be a matter of jacking and prying and pounding, and with the pressure that this spring would have, I didn't want to mess with that. So today I went to AutoZone and I picked up their coil spring compressor kit. This is one of their rental tools where you pay 60 bucks, use it, and take it back and get your 60 bucks back. So I'll use that now to compress the spring. So after cranking down with that spring compressor, I was able to get the spring pack in position. There's a jack stand under it here. Got the jack there as a secondary. So now it's time to put it back together. First I'll put this link on the stabilizer bar. Then I'll put this whole assembly back on. Then we'll drop the top one in. Hopefully 30 minutes we'll be done. So as I put this together, first I put that big castle nut on down here. Then I came over and put this anti-sway bar on. Then I did this front idler arm. Now I'm going to put the top control arm on, and we're almost done. Now when I took it out of the box, the upper and lower A-arms did not have the Zerk fitting installed, so you just thread that in by hand to start it, and then I just snugged it up with a crescent wrench. And the other thing to pay attention to is you have these little shims that were sitting right in here. So you have to have the same number of shim packs when you put it back together. Otherwise your alignment's going to be screwed up. So we'll keep going. Alright, I've got it buttoned up. Everything looks nice. I greased the Zerks. Everything's back the way it should be. I'm going to put the tire on and call it a done deal. I'd expected this job to take 2 or 3 hours when I started it, and it ended up taking me about 4.5. The big thing was screwing around with that spring, trying to get it in there correctly. But now everything has been replaced and it's all good to go. So I hope this video helped you. Have a good day.